Another day, another bit more bodging. I was told by a wise person on YouTube, forget your name, but anyway, to check the line from the inlet down to the ECU. These primitive ECUs have the MAP sensor, or MAF sensor, mass air pressure, it must be MAP, inside the ECU. Apparently what can happen is that it can get gummed up, in which case it won't be reading the right signal and it might be giving some erroneous signals. So I'm going to whip the ECU out, clean that line out, turn that upside down and hopefully clear a blockage. That's the plan. It's a free fix, hopefully, so might as well give it a go. We have the ECU out. The first thing that was suggested was to tip it up and see if oil drained out. I'm going to say that's a negatron. Nothing there. It's quite cool to the touch, so I'm going to leave that there and see if the sun will warm it up a bit, if there is oil in there. Now, take that line out. I'll try and blast it with the compressor and see what happens. In fact, why don't I just try doing the blow through it first and see what happens. Well, I can blow through that quite easily and there's no oil coming out, so I'm going to say that that's probably not the fault, but I'll give it a bit of a clean with brake cleaner anyway, and a blast with the airline. I've just wanged a load of brake cleaner in here, and we shall try blowing it on it again. Well, that was fairly undramatic, which is somewhat disappointing when you're hoping to find a free, cheap, fixy thing. So yeah, that didn't really work. No cheap fixes, free fixes for James. There's nothing in there, there's no obvious corrosion. Other stuff people have suggested is the rotor arm, spark plugs, dizzy cap, HT leads, all those kind of usual ignition related things. I initially didn't think it was going to be that, because in my experience it usually fucks up at higher RPMs when you've got weak coil and ignition stuff, whereas this is doing it just when it's part throttle, which makes me think, and my original sort of semi-diagnostics was that the TPS, that having swapped it, still does it. Whether it could be something to do with the idle valve or the throttle cable, I don't know. It could even be something wrong with the ECU. I doubt it, but it could be. Anyway, I'm going to look at all of these things and then shove it back together, take it for a spin and see what happens. I've just removed the top of the air filter so that I could get to the dizzy cap. I also pulled out the king lead, and there's a tiny bit of corrosion on it, but nothing that I would have said bad, not particularly where it's definitely engaging in the centre of the dizzy cap properly, and there's not like loads of scale in there, so that doesn't bother me. What was slightly more interesting was that the dizzy cap was loose, which cannot have been helping. Inside it looks pretty good. The carbon contact is fine and springy. There's no real obvious massive corrosion in there. I will clean it off with some emery paper, but yeah, it was actually a little bit loose on its lower thread, so maybe that's got something to do with it. The rotor arm doesn't feel great. There is a bit of dust and scale, so I'm going to clean all this up, put it all back together again and go for a little test drive. One other thing to do before test drive is replace the drive shaft nuts, because I had temporarily reused them, so I've bought a pair of new ones, one for either side, so these can go on, be torqued up and then staked, hopefully while the wheel's still on and I don't have to jack the car up. But yes, once hub nuts are done, I was trying so hard not to say hub nuts, I was trying to say drive shaft nut, because if I say hub nut, people will get confused and think I'm talking about Ian, but I'm not. I'm talking about drive shaft nuts. So they get torqued up. I think it's 195. I will double check before I actually do it, but that's what I'm doing now. Test drive number, I don't know what we're on now. Immobiliser. starts nicely, but then it always has done. So we shall go for a quick spin and see what happens. In other more, well, mildly interesting news, I have picked up a set of the original wheels and tyres. Well, not tyres, but you know, original wheels with tyres of the correct size for the car. So that is, I think, the wheel that 420 GSIs, 420 SLIs maybe, and even the coupes, I think they all had these. So I've got a set of 4 of those plus a steel spare. The tyres are really old, but they have got loads of tread, so they're going to go in the car in replacement of the Cosmos ones, or whoever buys it can basically take their pick of whatever wheels and tyres they want. In my continued quest to work out what the hell is going on, I've bought myself a cable that allows me to connect to the ECU, and then using special super duper software which comes from a free web app, you should be able to connect to the car and do stuff like look for live data and things. At the moment I have absolutely no idea what I'm doing. I think this is a MEMS 1.3 or 1.6. If I click connect, it says it's paired to the COM port thing, connect, but it says it's disconnected, which is quite annoying. Basically, I have no idea what I'm doing, and I will go and email the guy and see if I can work out exactly how to connect. I have noticed that while it's been idling and warming up, it's not been as happy as usual. So I'm going to see what happens if I disconnect this and see if it is actually doing something. No idea what's going on. The other thing that occurred to me as a real crude check of all of this is disconnect the throttle switch while the engine's running and the idle and see what happens. So it'll run with the idle off. Makes no odds. Disconnect the TPS. It's probably going to go to some sort of baseline value, so when the computer doesn't get information it just goes to default. It'll still run, so what I might do is take it for a test drive and individually disconnect one of those two and see which one makes the difference, thereby at least working out which one is the you know, the factor in all of this. So experiment number 1, with the car warmed up, I'm just going to drive it around and double check that it's still making the same irritating coughing problem at low RPM. Well, it was coughing and spluttering like a complete twat, so I've now disconnected the TPS and I'm going to drive it again and see what happens. Right, so driving with the TPS disconnected but the idle valve still connected, it was kind of coughing and spluttering the same as before. I've now done the reverse, so the TPS is reconnected and the idle is disconnected, and straight away obviously the idle is dropped to pretty much nothing. But it, I haven't driven it yet, so I'll take it for a spin and see what happens. Well, that didn't make a lot of difference. It's kind of much the same really. It is slightly different, but I think it always would be because I've disconnected the idle valve. So I'm going to reconnect both and then drive it around a bit more, see what happens. Another slight observation, these are known for splitting the rubber boot between the throttle body and the inlet. So I can make it split there. Just wondering whether, of course me revving it like this isn't the same as when it's in the car under load. I don't think it could be moving that much. I don't know. Car's a Well, that was super annoying. No, really further on than I was to start with. That's an interesting fault. If you have the fans on anything other than off, when you go back to off, they stay on. Maybe. Oh, I know what's happened. The rheostat has just moved, that's all. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, basically something's broken in there. Yippee! Well, I've just fitted my new tyres and wheels, and now I'm sat in the car wash because tomorrow I've got somebody coming to do a video on the car, which will be interesting. What's slightly annoying is I broke my thing there, and so this guy's turning up to look at the car, and yet that's broken. The tyres that are on the new wheels feel like they're made of plastic, so the car handles horribly. I still haven't finished the hesitancy issue, and all the other little jobs that I thought I'd have a chance to do, I haven't. So hence why I'm putting it through the car wash at least, and not washing it by hand because I basically run out of time. I haven't even set my clock correctly. This, incidentally, I never knew. I was wondering how you reset that. It has a little flap thing, and then the buttons are hidden in there, which I really like that. What time is it? It's sometime about 6 PM, I think. But yeah, that's a nice feature. A lot of cars, you just have big ugly buttons. Anyway, we shall work out what time it is, and I'll continue doing that. It's been ages since I've had a car that had a sunroof, and I'd forgotten the novelty of watching the spinny bladey bits go over the roof. Little things in life, eh? Another little thing I'd forgotten about, I've ordered brand new some covers for the grab handles because I'm still missing those. They're actually coming from Greece, but they haven't arrived yet because of the coronavirus lockdown and the amount of demand, I guess, on postal services. But we shall worry about that another time. Look at that, the back of the car feels so far away. It is a nice little car, this inside. Do like it. Shame I'm not keeping it. You're not going to believe this. I think me and Matt Richardson from the Furious Driving channel, I think we've worked out what the problem has been. We were chatting after he did some filming today, and he suggested it could be the Lambda sensor, and that of course is right at the front of the engine, right where it got hit. So I've disconnected the Lambda sensor and been driving it now for probably last 25 minutes. It's coughed once, but I've deliberately been trying to antagonize it into doing it again by labouring it a lot, and it hasn't, it's done it once, but that's it. So I think it's a Lambda sensor. So I'm on my way to my dad's because I think I've got a spare manifold with a Lambda sensor in it, so I'll whip that out and then swap it and see what happens. Okay, probably shouldn't be filming and driving, but just to illustrate, this is where it would have been coughing like a bastard, and it's absolutely fine. So we're doing about 1800 RPM labouring up a hill in fourth, and it hasn't done it once. Result. I've done yet more driving in this thing, and because I'm pretty sure it is the Lambda sensor, I've gone back, found another one. I'm going to try and fit that, but in the meantime, to reward the little car, I've given it about 40 quid's worth of Shell V-Power as a little reward, because I think I'm nearly there with this one. Problem is, I do really like it, and I do really want to keep it, which is, check those seats, need a clean, but I do. It's just a snazzy little car. Anyway, home time. Well, I don't really know how many more videos I'm going to do on this. It's kind of done. I haven't swapped that Lambda sensor yet, but there kind of isn't really a lot of point videoing what will end up being pretty much the same result as I've got now, which is a happy, runny, drivey little car. So Because Matt needed to have the car taxed so that he could drive it, I taxed it this morning and I put 6 months on it, so I might as well just keep using it. I was going to sell it, but I actually enjoyed driving it too much, and I've spent so much money on this thing. It probably owes me over £2 now, and it's probably not worth that much. But anyway, enough prattling. I am going to sign off now, as this being the final video on this car, just because it's a logical conclusion. If I do any more work on it, I will sort of post up. Otherwise, I'll just carry on with the SD1s and the bubble turbo. See you later.